Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Octant community meeting. Today is April 15th, 2020, and per usual, we got a bunch of status updates to go through. If you want to add something to the open Q&A, please do so here in the HackMD. And I'm going to share my screen so you all can see the agenda. Then I'm going to hand it over to Wayne.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks, Jonas. Yeah, I think this one will be pretty quick this week. I wanted to touch on kind of what's coming, the update with ODOT 12 and what's coming there. We had mentioned last week that we are looking at doing something early this week, potentially Monday or Tuesday. That got held up mainly by me because I wrapped up a couple PRs that have some implications around plugin API changes and also added the combined logging. So I want those to be part of ODOT 12. So we're going to wait for those to get reviewed and get merged in. But I wanted to just talk about them briefly. I didn't link the actual items in the agenda. I was in the middle of editing that when I was trying to set up my demo. So the combined logging PR is what's the number on that one?
Do you want to share your screen instead, Wayne?
No, one sec. I will just I'll just add it to the doc here.
Perfect.
It's 841. Yeah, get that added. So this is the combined logging PR. And so what this fixes is there was a couple outstanding issues. One was just to get all of the logs for all of the containers that were part of a pod, and then the other one was to be able to look at all of the descendant pod logs. So any, like, throughout the history of this pod existing, being able to see all of the logs from various containers. So and then there was another part of this, which was plugin authors currently were having to create a list of explicit containers that they would then pass in and get new logs for each individual container. Most of the time, what they want to do is just call new logs and get all of the log data and go through it themselves, similar to when you're using kubectl and you do -- all containers. So this PR kind of covers all three of those things. It gets the log aggregation happening in the Octant viewer, but as well as for anyone using the component new logs to create and enumerate all of the pod logs. They now can default to not passing in any containers, and they'll get all of them. So the next one that I wanted to cover is the one I just put up today that involves plugins. And so this will actually be a breaking change for the plugin API, specifically to the ActionRequest. So what this does is it's the start of enabling plugin authors to handle internal Octant actions. Currently in this PR, we're only going to expose a single action, which is the set namespace action. This allows plugin authors to create an action handler that will react to when the user changes the namespace. The benefit of doing something like this is if you have some type of long-running task or worker that's pulling data, you'll be able to interrupt or cancel that context and switch and restart the work with the new namespace instead of having to. Well, right now you don't know. You actually don't. You would have to. You can't do it right now. So this enables you to do it in a way that is easy and people are familiar with. So it does change the action request, the service.actionRequest object, to now include an action name. Previously, if you were a plugin author and you were using actions, you were fetching the action out of the payload data. Which was just set as a key by convention called action. So now we're explicitly giving you action name, which you can use to switch over the actions that you support and create handlers for that specific thing. So, and actually, if Jonas, if you click on the files changed and scroll down just a little bit, there'll be a file in there called doc.go, which is the, yeah, that one there. So we've added a doc.go file for this to kind of show how you can use these actions within your plugin. I don't know of anyone who is actually doing this manually, like attempting to use them before. So it probably will not impact a whole lot of people. But if you were using actions in your plugins, the action request object is changing, and and is now going to include this action name field. And so you'll need to rebuild once we release 0.12. We'll be sure to really let people know that that's happening, and be very, like, remind folks frequently that there's a plugin API breaking change happening. So. And then the next thing I wanted to cover was just there was a handful of fixes for the nav, just a handful of small improvements that Milan has been working on, adding more tests, improving the current selection, and just general cleanup and refactoring of some things. So that's all going to be a part of the 0.12 as well. That is number 843. Get that added quickly. Clean it up later. So that's 843. And then, so are there any questions on either anything with 0.12 or the things we just covered there?
So this, the vertical navigation is going to be in 0.12. That's what Milan demoed last week.
Yep.
Yeah, there were a few things last week that weren't really working right. Does this fix all of that?
I think so. The main issue is selection, and I think that's fixed now. And there were a few other small improvements, but I think it's pretty good now. Ready to go.
Awesome.
So yeah, so moving on, I wanted to talk about documentation. That has been something that we have been talking about in the last few community meetings. Sam has started some work around getting our component library and some examples around that documented. And I have just started on doing some work around getting the user guide for Octant.dev going. And so I just wanted to let folks know that we are giving that attention, and we're giving it some priority, and we're hoping to have a good round of new and updated documentation that's a little more clear and accessible and easier for folks to get started with in the coming couple weeks, where we'll be publishing that out. So it'll probably be published independent of any specific release, because it doesn't really depend on a release to Octant to get the new documentation out. But I just wanted to make sure to let folks know that we are working on that stuff, and it is important to us. And we hear you when you say that you'd like a little more user-friendly documentation around plugins and getting started with Octant. So that is coming.
Also, it looks like your rooster made an appearance on our community call.
Yeah, they'll do that. They have no manners.
Yeah, that's great, Wayne. Just a little side note. So I applied for documentation search as well with Algolia. So I'll be implementing that on the site. So you can now, yeah, in a couple of days, you'll be able to search for things in the documentation. So it'll be even more user-friendly.
And I didn't make a note of this on the agenda. Thank you, Jonas. I think that's great. That'll be useful once we have documentation that's worth searching. So I don't know if it's quite there yet, but yeah, that's excellent. I didn't put this on the agenda, but I wanted to call out Sam recently put up a PR for a proposal to enhance and redo our end-to-end testing. This is very important. It's something that is currently lacking in Octant right now, and getting this kind of refresh and update to our existing end-to-end testing will really help create a much more confidence level in not only all of our PRs that we're putting in, but also the releases that we're putting out. And I think it's going to greatly reduce the amount of regressions and just like even small surface level bugs that we have been seeing release to release. So I just wanted to call that out and say thank you, Sam, for getting that document up, and also see if there was anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I didn't really have too much to add. I might update the proposal as we start taking a stab at it. And we do have some leftover, I guess, the good starting base from the previous attempt as well. And so we're still using the same tech. We're just going to be smarter about how we're doing it this time. And hopefully it'll lead to a point where we just don't feel like it's a green check mark that our code has to run through, and we feel like it's doing something useful.
Yeah, that's great. And I also wanted to mention that we are, I'll put the link for no, that's the wrong thing. Hold on. This is adding the link for the proposal for end-to-end testing in there. I also wanted to mention that we are working on another, this is useful too. There's a pull request up right now to implement the new breadcrumbs that Milan has been working on. And that will also be part of 0.12. That's another thing that kind of goes under that navigational fixes heading. This will really make it a lot easier to kind of use Octant without having to depend so much on the browser Chrome to move back and forth and do things. And it will start to get us to a place where we're going to be focusing on keeping the navigation within Octant itself, so that as we're a standalone application, as well as when you're using it in the browser, the feeling is the same. And independent of where you're using Octant, you'll have a sense of how to move around it and how to get back to where you were. And I think that's just going to be a really helpful small. It seems small, but I think it'll be really helpful and have a good impact on general usage of Octant. Okay, so that's it for the updates. I wanted to do a quick demo of some of the things that we were talking about just on this list. So unless folks have questions or things to add, or I'll move on to that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Go for it.
Great. Let's see. I think I got this. There we go.
And while you're setting that up, one of the things, I missed the community meeting last week, but do you have like a tentative date for when the Electron application will be done? Like a high-level estimate?
I think so. After this 0.12 release goes, we were waiting specifically for the navigation piece to be finished. So once 0.12 is released and we have the new navigation and breadcrumbs working, then we'll probably you'll probably see in the next release an update to just get all of the baseline feature parity up to speed with the Electron app. Once the navigation is there, it really should not take too much effort to get that functioning, because we're just going to get it to baseline, just to feature parity of what we have now. We're not going to be focusing on adding any of the desktop integrations that we want to put in there for the first version. The first version is just going to be same Octant you have now, but just launched as a standalone app, so that specifically Windows users have a much better experience with launching it.
And then upgrades will be part of that as well, right?
In the first pass, probably no. I imagine what we'll do is we'll release the first pass just to get folks moved over to that version, and then we will implement auto updating as a separate item, mainly because there's some complexity there that we'll want to deal with and handle that I think would probably push out the release of the Electron application longer than I would like. I would like to get it in people's hands and get them using it and get them finding any types of issues.
So we're probably thinking of like June timeframe then, if it's going to be right after 0.12.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Okay. So I think I'm sharing the right thing. I think you all can see it. If you can't.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Great. So first thing, I wanted I'll just show the plugin. I'm here already on this pod. I'll show the log streaming. So to the user, there won't be much difference in what they see when they click on logs, except now you are seeing, you'll notice on the far left column, there's a combined, there's a new field. It's the JSON1 and JSON2. So this is the combined output of 2 containers within the same pod. By default, that's the view you get. When you select the dropdown and you switch to a new one, the container name goes away, and it's just showing you the single entry for that container.
For the default case, can we say, instead of actually having it empty, can you just say all containers?
We can, yeah. I mean, we can put something in the front end code to actually put some data in there, like
yeah. That way they know that if they select all or no filter.
Yeah, similar to similar to this, where it says all namespaces when you're on the cluster review. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Yep. So that's it. Again, to the user, there should not be much. For us on the back end, this is a really nice change, because this is now streaming out to the client. I mentioned in a previous community meeting, what we used to do before is we would take we would ingest all of the log into memory and then ship it to the client every 5 seconds. And this is now streaming. So let's see this, I think this will work. So if I pop open a port forward, I go to the logs. No, my service is broken, so I can't actually port forward to it. Maybe this one works. One of these works, maybe. No. I haphazardly just tossed 2 containers into the same thing, and so it's not actually a good representation of what you would see. It's running, but I can't port forward to it because it doesn't actually bound to the service. So if I go to services here, it's
for an end user, I mean, the benefit is that they don't have to wait 5 seconds to see their logs, but this is also smoother, like how the visibility of those logs. Like, I mean, if you batch them every 5 seconds, then every 5 seconds they get like a burst, right? So
yeah.
With the streaming, I'm assuming that the end user benefit is kind of twofold, right? They get a consistent flow of logs, so they don't have to wait. They don't have a 5 second overhead to view their things, but these are also less strain on the system.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
So there is less strain where, on the client or on Kubernetes, like on the client in the Octant client, or both?
Really on both, because since we're not, so before what we would do is we would open the stream, ingest the entirety of the log, ship 100 lines of that off to the client, and then close the stream. Now we open the stream, ingest the log, and then we just sit with the stream open, and we only receive or send information from the API when there's actually a new entry in the log file. So it's just like if you were tailing the log or following the log with kubectl. So we're not having to refetch the entire log every single time.
Okay, so let's train on Kubernetes API and Octant itself. Okay, that's
yep. So I think I have a version of this running somewhere that might work. I don't know. I was testing lots of things, and I broke. I was going to show the streaming in real time. There's actually a video I can put in the community document that is a demo of the streaming actually working.
Well, that's actually the easiest way. Actually, go open up one of your containers, open up exec, and do a printf in a loop, and then go back and look at the logs. Do it all in Octant.
I see what you're saying, but all my containers are currently broken in a way that prevents me.
That's okay. I want to see if you wanted to be a renegade here and do it all live. But
let's see. This one might work. Let's see. Oh no, port forwarding doesn't work on Azure. So this port forward's never going to complete.
Jonas is making fun of us.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. This is great. I love it.
Well, it does work. I swear.
Works
But
on
yeah.
the machine. Yeah.
So this happened to me last time. I did a demo on a podcast the other day, and I was trying to run off this merged crazy master that wasn't actually well tested, and this happened to me that time too. I'm used to it now. It doesn't even bother me. Let's see. I can probably just no, I can't. You know what I can do? I really want to show this because I think it's neat. Anyway, I will as I talk about that, I'll move on to. So the other thing I wanted to show was the plugin responding to the namespace changes. So you can see up there it says current namespace. Now it's default. Now it's Octant demo. So this is actually the plugin code itself registering an action handler that receives the action from Octant when the namespace changes. You can imagine this being extended to things like when the context changes, other events that might happen within Octant. Right now, the only one that we're putting into the package so that it's public is the namespace one. That's the one that is needed for a plugin that's currently being worked on. But as needs arise, we'll continue to add them. Adding them does not create any breaking API changes. So now that this code is in place, we can add new ones by moving them over into the public package, and adding new ones will not require any changes from plugin authors unless they wanted to take advantage of those new actions. And that's it for the action stuff. It's pretty neat. It's an important. It's a good step in the right direction. So there's been this has been an open issue. Originally opened by Jason, who was working on the Tecton plugin. He originally opened this issue a few months back, and so having this work completed now, I think is going to be really useful for a lot of folks.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Okay, so one last thing. We're going to try this again. I'm going to go. I think I fixed my JSON server. I'm going to go try and find out right now. And if I did, then we can do I can show the log streaming. Yeah, okay. So now we'll go to logs, can see that there is the log, and then as I click in this browser window over here, you can see the entries come into the log panel. That's it. Probably could make some adjustments so that this is at its full the window size, so that it doesn't keep growing like that.
Right.
But yeah, so that's it. So this is what happens now when you're looking at logs and things are happening.
It's very cool. Is that a pause button?
Pause button.
As in, like, don't keep scrolling. I want to stay and read where I am, and then I'll scroll. Yeah, don't worry about it. But we can think about that down the line, like an ability for don't move the scrolling. Like I'm reading, like let's say line. Would be actually very useful to have lines, line numbers, because it allows them to have a frame of reference. So, and you can have an option there if you want the line numbers to be in there or not. But if they have line numbers and then someone is reading between line 50 to 70, for example, don't keep growing the log. Just, keep growing and changing my window size, but don't move my cursor from there because I'm reading.
Yeah, so it works that way now. It's so like if I see like if I'm up here at the top, right, and I'm highlighting this, and you can watch the scroll bar on the side. You see it growing.
Okay, got it. Okay, perfect. So maybe line numbers, it will be important because then people can reference them easy.
Yep.
You kind of have a timestamp as a reference to that. A little hard to read, but
yeah, timestamp is important if you want to correlate things that
Right.
have an impact on time. But for most people, they basically, for example, think about how you troubleshoot something, right? You're going to look at lines 50 to 51, highlight them, maybe copy
Right.
them in another thing, and then go to lines 100 to 200 and say, okay, oh, this is how it happened later on. And you put them next to each other. So line numbers are very important in that, because people, it's easier to see a line number and remember that versus seeing a huge timestamp.
Yeah, I think also kind of in line with the pause is just a button that lets you resume, or like if you are up in the backlog, a button that lets you just instantly jump back down to the bottom so that you're now looking at the latest set of logs.
Yeah, that's basically what I meant by freeze and freeze, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's similar thinking.
So we kind of have the freeze already we get for free just based on the viewer we're using, but the ability to now resume. So like a good example would be like you're using this filter here and you want to now go like, oh, I found what I was looking for. There's things happening and I want to just resume. Then I would click something in there. So yeah, we can add a issue for getting those couple features in there.
And then one last thing, and take this with a grain of salt. I haven't been a developer for like 16 years now, but when I was, one of the biggest things that you could have something like this, in addition to filters, also have an option for highlighting. So someone could give you 4 or 5 terms that you want to highlight, but you don't want to filter based on those.
Yeah, so that's kind of how this works already, right? So
Well,
if I say comments.
Yeah, but in this case, you can highlight multiple. You can basically put 2 things, right? So put space and then say albums.
Oh, I see. So yeah, you would have to do that with a regular expression because this does support regular expressions, but yeah,
But what I'm talking about is allow them to filter on something and only show the filter, but then highlight a few things that are important to them. So for example, if you're following, I'll give you an example. If you're following a transaction ID and someone that wrote a multi-pod service that has transaction IDs or some form of identity that crosses application boundaries or pod boundaries, then they might want to highlight that, but that's not what they want to filter on. They want to filter through everything and see what's happening, but they want to see when that transaction shows up in the log.
Yeah, I see. So like a good example would be like, what I really want is this, and then I want to see all my 304s.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so right now you would just depend on the browser search to do that for you, which we won't have access to when we're in the Electron app. So we'll want to create a way to mimic that same behavior. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
So it's like a few keywords that someone can enter that will be highlighted, but they're not a filter because you're not depending on you finding them in a sequence, for example.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Kind of like how labels work, where you can add multiple labels and they're ordered together. Or ANDed together, but instead you'd want this to be a list of things that are ordered together.
That's right.
Yeah, if you open an issue for that, we can look into it. If you put some of the, just put that detail and that use case into an issue, that would be great. Okay, that's all I had to demo. Was I just wanted to show off the new logging and the plugin support for namespace changes. So that's it. That's all I got. Anyone have anything to add? Milan, Sam? Great.
All right. Cool.
Looks great. And I'm looking at the agenda here. We don't have any open Q&A for today. So that's it for today's meeting. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your week. See you next week.
Absolutely. Hey, Wayne, I'll ping you on Slack really quickly right now.